I think where Blizzard messed up in Shadowlands is to give players what they wanted, and turns out they shouldn't have listened. Here is the logic, okay? Listen to this. What I pointed out a few days ago was the question as to why Shadowlands, despite being very close and very similar to the type of content that has been released in BfA and in Legion, it feels so much worse in the eyes of the community. Even if you remove all of the bad PR, which has been compounding on giving Shadowlands a bad look, from the lawsuits to the competing other games like Final Fantasy, where many content creators are currently not even bothering to play with WoW because of the little following it has, creating an even worse sort of atmosphere around the game, as well as the delays, whether or not they were caused by the COVID pandemic or not. The patches have been delayed by a lot, so there is this entire thing compounding on top of Shadowlands, which is making it feel worse. Even if you exclude all of that, we could make a poll. We could ask some statements from the witnesses who have played the game, at least since Legion, and we would be able to hear the responses, and very likely people would have said that Legion was the better expansion, BfA was sort of in the middle, some good things, some bad things, and then Shadowlands was the worst one of these three. These have been the post-Warlords expansions, where Blizzard created this new cast, this new mold in how to develop the expansions, the expansion cycles, the way in which they wanted to develop patches and content throughout the expansion, etc., etc. They have been very, very close in how they have been developed. Yet, Shadowlands seems to be so much worse than the previous two expansions, which gets you thinking. It gets you thinking because when you look at Shadowlands and you compare it to the previous expansions, and you look at what you can do in the game, so if you count doing Mythic Plus, and then doing the raid, and then doing world quests, and then having a class hall or a garrison or a campaign mission which expands and continues throughout the expansion, and even having the same mission table with followers, etc., etc. All these mechanics, all these systems have been in place since Legion. They have been available in the last three expansions in a very similar way, near identical. That's the same cast that Blizzard has used to make all three of these expansions. If I told you, hey, log into the game, do a handful of world quests for your emissaries, do some campaign quests for your campaign story, do 2 or 3 Mythic Plus keys, and then do a raid. I could have been talking about Legion, I could have been talking about BfA, or I could have been talking about Shadowlands, and you had no way to distinguish the three. So how is it that Shadowlands is being received so much worse than BfA and than Legion? Which is back to the first thing I said at the start of this video. I think in Shadowlands, Blizzard has been very honest in how they wanted to change some of the mechanics, some of the systems in the game, which ended up backfiring horribly, because in Legion and BfA, Blizzard was able to develop essentially emotional blackmail. Blizzard was able to develop systems which manipulated players to stay in the game for longer and to give them a feeling that outside of the things you would have done anyways, like Mythic Plus, like raids, like PvP, you wanted to stay in the game. Those were systems that people had been complaining a lot about. Those were systems that were considered bad by the community. And Blizzard, rightfully so, eventually decided to get rid of all of them at once in Shadowlands. The problem that this caused is that players no longer had any blackmail against them to keep them in the game. Players no longer felt manipulated enough to spend time in the game, and suddenly they realized the content was lacking. What exactly am I talking about? Well, for starters, artifact power, Azeroth power, and anima power. In the previous two expansions, you felt compelled, you felt forced, you felt required to spend time in the game to collect artifact power or to collect Azeroth power because they were extremely tightly linked to character power. You wanted your artifact power because you had to level up your weapons. You wanted to unlock your mini talent tree inside your weapon. Even when you wanted to reroll to a different spec, you still had to spend artifact power to bring that spec's weapon up. Of course, the entire system had other good feedback about it. For example, the artifact weapons having tons of different collectible appearances, keeping you in the game. That was a very nice positive. But the main reason, the main pull was the fact that you needed to grind artifact power. That was the thing. It's the reason why people went, for example, to endlessly farm the fastest Mythic Plus dungeons back in Legion, because Mythic Plus gave artifact power, so people wanted to grind dungeons like Maw of Souls to acquire as much AP as possible. It's why every day, for months and months and months into the expansions, people still went around doing world quests, because they gave artifact power. The same can be said for BfA. BfA had Azeroth power, but in terms of character power, it was the same. Blizzard develops Azeroth armor. Azeroth armor has rings that you have to unlock based on the level of your Azeroth necklace, which means, again, you have to spend time going around, doing world quests, completing emissaries because you want the AP. Then we go into Shadowlands and Blizzard says, guys, we listened. Guys, we knew you did not really like all of this continuous, endless grind of this currency, of this player power currency, so we are going to get rid of it. Initially, people were very skeptical. People were memeing on the fact that Blizzard, after artifact power into Azeroth power, they came up with anima power, and it would have totally been just like the two previous systems, but eventually they saw the evidence. Anima power was a system that had nothing to do with character power, so if you didn't care about it, if you didn't want to do it, you did not have that emotional blackmail, that manipulative system that pushed you to chase this new currency just because you wanted to power up your character. The problem that this caused is the fact that now, what is your incentive in doing world quests? Ask yourself this: when's the last time you went in Shadowlands through the 4 different regions to hunt for some AP? When's the last time you logged in, you opened the map, you clicked on all of the AP quests in the game, and then with your world quest tracker, you went around and got all of that AP for you? That's right. You don't do this. That's the problem. You don't do this because it doesn't matter anymore. The problem with the fact that it doesn't matter anymore is that it doesn't keep you in the game. Yes, you might not have liked it. Yes, you might have gotten frustrated. Yes, it might have brought you to get burned out with the game faster. But then again, why do people see Legion and why do people see BfA more positively than they do Shadowlands? We just settled with the notion that these systems were not enjoyed by the community, yet people spent more time in the game because of these systems. Blizzard removed them because the community supposedly did not enjoy them, but this caused, as a result, the community to not find any other reason to spend more time in the game. This can be extended to other systems that Blizzard removed because they were not very well liked by the community. One example at the forefront is RNG. RNG is, of course, a cheap an easy way to get people into the game because you never know once you're getting your reward. You don't have deterministic rewards. You don't have a timetable that you can set on your calendar and know exactly when you can get your reward. So they get you to stay in the game to try to complete whichever activity it is to receive the rewards. And in previous expansions, we had the capital crime of this system, which is Titanforging. Titanforging was yet another manipulative system to get you to stay in the game, because now suddenly not only are you pushed in doing AP world quests because they give you character power, you are even pushed to do item reward world quests because you know that any one of those items that you're getting from those world quests can Titan forge into a mythic quality item. Again, this is another example, something the community was very vocal against, another example of something the community complained a lot about, that the community said was burning them out or was frustrating them because they felt like they need to do it, as it was a very easy way to get some massive character power if you were lucky, so Blizzard got rid of it in Shadowlands. But then what happened? What happened is, when's the last time you went in the open world to complete an item world quest? You see? That's right. After the first few weeks, Never. Unless you're playing on an alt, unless you're leveling up another character, those gear world quests have become useless. Whereas back in Legion and back in BfA, you had reasons well into the last tier of the expansion to continue doing those just because of Titanforging, or the spin-off of Titanforging, which was corruption in the last tier of BfA. Another one of these treacherous and manipulative examples is Legendaries. Back in Legion, you had yet another incentive for completing content, even to the point that it was content you didn't even enjoy doing whatsoever, because of the chance, even just the chance of getting a legendary. So completing emissaries, doing the Wither training scenario, doing LFR, normal, heroic and mythic difficulty, all the raids of the expansion, just to bring up your chance at receiving a legendary. All these things were keeping you in the game, and Blizzard got rid of all of these things. In BfA, you didn't have legendaries. What you had, for example, was Benthic, yet another way of keeping you in Najatar to grind mana pearls because you wanted the best possible roll on the Benthic items, the good effect plus the socket. So you can see where I am trying to get with this thought process. The thought process is that it's a complicated situation because you have the feeling, you have the idea, you have the memory of having a better time, having a more engaged relationship with Legion and with BfA compared to Shadowlands. But at the same time, that engagement was the child of manipulative, treacherous and unethical systems, which pushed you to consume more content, even if you were frustrated, even if you weren't enjoying it that much, just because it was tied to character power. Whereas in Shadowlands, you had the ethical, nice and player-friendly decision from Blizzard to get rid of all of these shackles, to no longer force you to grind anima power, to no longer force you to grind systems because you had some very direct character power attached to these systems. Unfortunately, what Blizzard discovered on their own skins is that if players don't have that type of incentive, they won't really do that content. They won't really engage in a content which only offers some mild transmog and cosmetic rewards, especially if they are pretty pricey and pretty grindy. Blizzard thought that they could substitute increasing the level of your artifact weapon or increasing the level of your artifact necklace. They thought they could replace that amount of grind with grinding anima to unlock a transmog set. Of course, people had not really the same idea in their minds, because they have shown that they were willing to grind that content if it meant they could improve their character, but if you take away all of that and you just leave them with some cosmetic stuff, they're not gonna have the same drive and the same push to complete that content. So, unironically, that is how I feel, and that is why I feel we have a problem right now. The ironic part is that Blizzard has made people more free. They have freed them of all of these constraints, all of these nasty and frankly frustrating constraints and shackles that existed in Legion and BfA that forced you to continue to consume content for player power, even if it was repetitive, even if it was RNG to the max. The problem is that once they removed all of these constraints, the player base realized that they didn't really have the drive, the incentive and the push to do any of that content because they just don't care. Which is both funny and sad at the same time, because it drives yet another point to the camp of people who believe that the "you think you do, but you don't" statement is very true. The statement that the player base in the end doesn't really know what it wants and shouldn't really be listened to when developing the game. Because at this point, given the reception to Shadowlands, there are arguments to be made. Because what if Blizzard kept all of these blackmails, all of these emotional manipulations in the game to get you to play more? What if the legendary system in Shadowlands had a mini talent tree that you needed to level up with anima power, and anima power was available in world quests and in Torghast and in the Maw and in the Cortia dailies? You might very well have kept hearing the complaints of the community, just like you heard the complaint of artifact power farming in Legion and like you heard the complaint of Azeroth farming in BfA, but you are pretty much certain that the players would have spent more time in the game and would have not complained that there was nothing to do in the expansion. What if they made shards of domination much larger, like a socket in every piece of item, and shards of domination were droppable in every bit of content and they were completely RNG? Yet another manipulative and treacherous system that pushes you to spend more content at the cost of your sanity and your frustration because you never quite know when you were going to get the shards you wanted, but you're also certain that you would have gotten people to spend more time into the game because they wanted to power up their character with these shards, so they would have consumed more of the content. What if they made legendary crafting even more RNG? What if they enlarged the ways in which you could obtain Soul Cinders and Soul Ash, so from multiple avenues of content, like make them available even in world quests, but crafting legendaries was basically RNG, and you had no ways of choosing which ones you were crafting, so you had to constantly grind this currency to be able to craft legendaries. Yet another system which would have caused people to complain because it made them spend a lot of time chasing these items in-game, but just like in Legion and just like in BfA, it would have made people spend more time in the game. This is why I feel like it's a pretty funny and sad situation, because Blizzard gave the players what they wanted, which was the removal of all of these constraints, this RNG systems, this repeatable grind forced on you because of character power. Unfortunately, this made the player base realize that if they are not being forced, they don't really want to do world quests. If they're not being forced, they would much rather just do the content they enjoy. For many people, it's either PvP or Mythic Plus, perhaps just raid logging. So if they don't have anything that is going to force them to stay in the game for character power, then they would rather just not do it. The problem is that then this is going to bring us where we are now, which is the complaint that there is basically nothing to do in the game, that the game feels empty and the content just doesn't last enough. Because 9.1 launches, you have your shards of domination to obtain. It might take you a couple of weeks. If you raid, you're gonna take another few weeks to get your items to put the shards into, but after that, your chase for character power is over. You don't have to continue grinding world quests, you don't have to continue grinding Korthia or an endless character power gain. You don't want to do multiple difficulties of the raids or chase item world quests because something might Titanforge and be great. So it severely limits the push, the incentive that you have to stay in the game. This is currently the main issue in Shadowlands. We might talk in the future about what possible solution we could have in the game to fix this. However, it is going to be a quite hard task, because at the end of the day, doing world quests is not too good of an activity, so it's kind of difficult to imagine making people want to do world quests if you don't tie them with character power. But I am sure we might find something worth enough for people to want to spend some more time doing this type of content. For now, we can stop here. After this lecture that I have just given, let me guys know what you think about it, and let me guys know how much time have you spent in Legion and in BfA consuming content that you thought was frustrating or that you thought wasn't really that fun once you remove the character power you were trying to chase from that content. Because if you do admit, if you do see that in fact you have spent a lot of time doing that content, then you are pretty much admitting that there is nothing really inherently wrong with the systems of Shadowlands. It's just that Blizzard took away the character power that you used to get in Legion and you used to get in BfA, so right now it just feels empty, it feels unrewarding. Even though you were complaining about it, even though you were saying it was frustrating and tedious to do, at the end of the day, that's what pushed you to complete that content. You're basically being a tsundere for character power. That's how it is. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. If you've enjoyed the content and want to support the channel, you can leave a like, comment, down below, as well as subscribe to the channel, provided you pass our background check. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, it's so obvious. Who would spend time doing world quests if they give you no power?